Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tommo, and welcome to not a race Chinwag. No, we have news. You've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title. Gabriel Bortoleto will join Audi from 2025 and beyond. It's finally announced. The cat is out the bag. Let's have a talk about it here live on YouTube. Welcome FH4 player Galil, Amanda, Marta, Spook, UNH18, Tired, and the rest of you. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for listening audio only as well, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the rest. And thank you for supporting me on Patreon. I won't be doing a post stream on this one. This is a bit of news, right? So I want to cover it, get it done, get it out there. But for all of my Chinwags, my pre and post race ones, I do stream exclusively on Patreon after the fact. I'm also nursing a headache, not because of any alcohol consumption, I wish. I just have a really bad headache, but paracetamol is helping me through. Right, lovely jubbly. Let's talk about it then. Let's get into it. Let's talk about Gabriel Bortoleto joining Audi. Now, is this a surprise? It shouldn't be, because Gabriel is looking likely. Might not happen, but he could be a back-to-back F3 and F2 champion, which is typically a pretty good sign. Now, I'm going to do a quick poll. Who would you have chosen for the seat? So I'm going to give a few options. We can give 4 options on YouTube. So would you have gone with Bortoleto like they have, like Mattia Binotto? Obviously, he has come in, replaced Andreas Seidel. A lot of that personnel has been shifted around. Maybe if Seidel was still in place, someone else would have got the seat. Who knows, right? Would it have been Bortoleto? Would it have been Bottas? Would it have been Colapinto? Because, of course, Franco has forced himself into the driver transfer mill. Or would it be other? Would it be a Tao Pourchaire, perhaps, who, of course, has been overlooked, Sauber's very own Tao Pourchaire? I'll do a little poll just to get an idea of everyone who's here live on YouTube, what you lot think. Who is Bortoleto, Blathy? Have you not been watching Formula 2? Look, the thing is, right, when you look at drivers who go back-to-back, which again isn't guaranteed, right? Gabriel is only marginally ahead of Isaac Kadjar, who we will talk about later as well, because he is part of this kind of situation, okay, somewhat, especially when we get into the Colapinto stuff. When you go back-to-back, winning Formula 3 and Formula 2, which Gabriel could well do, he is on course to do, it's a pretty guaranteed track record, because the only drivers to have done that are Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Charles Leclerc, right? Who... You've got 100% banger record there, right? All of them different gravy, yeah? They have delivered firmly on the world stage. Piastri, Russell. Piastri's only in his second season. He's done bits. They're all race winners. Charles Leclerc, I think, second best driver in F1. It's a pretty guaranteed record. Of course, nothing is guaranteed in life. There is no guarantee that Bortoleto will be able to perform to that same standard. But it's looking pretty good, right? So if you're going to make a prediction, then so be it. You know, you'd be understanding to make that. And of course, Colapinto was only 7th in Formula 2, got the promotion, and has really impressed. Ollie Behrman, Kimi Antonelli. Bortoleto has been clear of Antonelli this year. He's older, but you know they're both rookies as well going into this Formula 2 season. Bortoleto's young. He's promising. He's Brazilian, first Brazilian driver we've had in Formula 1 since Felipe Massa in 2017. What's my favourite flavour of crisp, Billy? It's, of course, cheese and onion. That's my go-to. And, look, I think Bortoleto's... It's so impressive, and the potential... Again, potential is the key word. Like, the potential for Audi to come in. They've got Nico Hülkenberg as an established, known quantity in ground effect as well, right? Because he's been doing bits in a Haas. And that can't be said for all drivers with experience, okay? Carrying that experience and that performance into ground effect machinery is easier said than done. Nico Hülkenberg has been able to do that. It's a German driver. It's an Audi, established German marquee. Bringing in a young driver was always going to be a not crazy option, okay? Bringing in 2 rookies going full Haas 2019, whenever it was, 2020, would have been chaos, right? Of course. But you've got Hülkenberg, which enables you to be a bit more risk appropriate for this. And I think Bortoleto is a fine sign. And again, he's representing a nation that's not been represented in Formula 1 for the longest time, far too long, really, because Brazil and Formula 1, it's synonymous, right? It's synonymous. And we'll get into Tao. We'll get into Tao as well, of course, because, yeah, he's going to feel very hard done by as a Formula 2 champion himself. who knocked on the door consistently over his 3 seasons in Formula 2, did Tao, won it in the end. but hasn't gotten the seats. He's likely, I reckon, we'll see a bit more of Teo in IndyCar. But as much as you can say, oh, it's unfair on Porsche or Bottas or even Colapinto, I think Bortoleto, what more could he be doing, right? And again, representing a nation that's not been represented for a very, very long time. He will bring sponsors with him, no doubt, just as Franco Colapinto will to wherever he ends up. But he is, as you say, Jesus, a top-tier driver. So no complaints from me anyway about Gabriel Bortoleto. What are you saying in the poll? 45% of you, Bortoleto, you would have chosen for the seat. 15% Bottas, 31% Colapinto, 9% other. And that's the thing, right? Because there's more of a guarantee on paper that Colapinto, because we've actually seen him do it in a Formula One car. We've seen him do it in a Williams. You know, I have no reason to believe he wouldn't also be able to perform equivalently impressively, if that's the term, in a Sauber, even though the Sauber's trash, right? It's going to be rubbish next year because, of course, all of Audi's resource and focus is going to be on 2026 and beyond. Listen, if you can just, if you tank 2025 as well, that's going to be 2 back-to-back years of the maximum ATR wind tunnel allowance, which surely is only gonna, with the investment coming in and the facilities already there at Himwell, they run out of excuses quite quickly. You know, becoming a full works team with the Audi Power unit in the back. No point in having driver academies. Look, listen, Matthew, and I think that's the point, right? And we've talked about this with the Red Bull situation. It's all well and good looking at these things in terms of who deserves it and having an academy to build up drivers, etc., etc. But you know, Binotto's come in. He's got no loyalty to anyone apart from the board at Audi, right? And to keep himself in a job, and he's got to look at who is best placed to lead that team forward. He's got no loyalty to Porsche Maloney on a personal level because he's coming in from the outside. And he's elected to go with Gabriel, along with the board. I'm sure the Audi board would have had to be on board with this one as well. But completely understandable to feel bad for Porsche, absolutely. It's kind of great driver, but just kind of there at the wrong time. And I think that's often happened throughout Formula One. Many a quality name. I think Jaime Alguersuari, I think Stoffel Van Dorn. You know, 2 examples of I think really great drivers who could have amounted to some greatness and just weren't there at the right moment. They did get into F1 at least, and there's many a young driver in the past and will be in the future who won't actually make it to the top. But fortunately, Bortoleto has, again, if he does go back-to-back F3, F2, then this decision, you know, on paper again, to put him into an F1 seat is absolutely a no-brainer. And I've not linked, but remember I did a video on Bortoleto kind of a month or so ago, about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, talking about how McLaren could fit him in. They have released Gabriel Bortoleto, which makes sense, right? There's no point in Sauber taking him on a loan deal. Like, that doesn't work for them because, well, this is Audi, right? This is an ambitious project going forward. If they're just loaning drivers for other teams that they can just develop and then give back, or have to give back, have an obligation to give back, that doesn't really work for Audi. And so fair play to McLaren not allowing their affiliation with Gabriel to get in the way of this incredible opportunity for him, because I do think being in an F1 seat, even if it's a rubbish one, is better than not, and trying to play for a long-term thing, because it just puts you front and centre and you can prove your ability in a poor team. Think George Russell at Williams, really bad team. Think Charles Leclerc Sauber. I mean, they weren't too bad by the end of his time, but when he started that season in Sauber, they were rough as well. So, well done, Franco. Happy for him. But what that does mean is that we've got 2 departures, haven't we? And most importantly, most crushingly, destroyingly, great use of the English lingo there, Tomo. It's Jova. It's Jova. Listen. Zhou Guanyu, it was fun while it lasted. Look, I don't know. I do genuinely think, and maybe I need to do this for a video, right, and look back, because I genuinely feel, and I could be wrong here, this is just my instinctive feeling, that he actually carried himself pretty well in his first 2 seasons, and he was fairly close to Bottas. I could be wrong. Maybe that's just me completely misremembering those first 2 seasons, but I think he did all right. At the very, very start of 2022, when that car was quick, Bottas was capitalising, Zhou was not, for sure. But Zhou had his moments. It wasn't a complete howler of a career. This year's been terrible. Now, how much of that is you know, Frankenstein car, messing around. They always seem to be messing around with his setup a bit more than Valtteri is. You know, we see other drivers, fan bases try and use that excuse to defend them, and I don't know, no one's using that for Joe. I don't know. I feel like I need to prop the boy. Look, listen. At the end of the day, Sauber, there's no reason for them to tank Joe's career. If they could have made it work with Zhou Guanyu, and I said this in my video, the aptly titled "Why He's Perfect for Audi." If they could have made Zhou work, they would have made Zhou work, because Zhou brings that back in as the kind of first full-time Chinese driver in Formula One. That's a huge market for Audi. There is no reason why they would consciously work against him, because if they can bring in a driver and make them work who has backing as well in a critical market to a marquee like Audi, they're going to try and make it work. They obviously didn't see enough from Zhou in the data. Even if the performances were bad, if they saw enough in the data, they would have given him the shot, and they didn't. So, you know what? It was fun while it lasted. I still feel like a reserve role at that team would work for Zhou, but it sounds like from the announcement that this is a full break for Zhou Guanyu from this team. He said there's other options about the paddock, maybe a reserve driver role, which is probably the best he can hope for. He was just another Giovinazzi. Perhaps, Youssef. I think that, again, this Sauber car is rubbish. Like, it, relatively speaking, of course, it's all relatively speaking, it's so much worse than even the next bet. Because the Alpine, Williams, Racing Bulls, Haas, all of these teams on any given weekend can be the kind of sixth, even fifth quickest car. Sauber just never. It's just always terrible. And it's hard to really showcase. And it's been hard for Zhou to really showcase what ability he does have. But ultimately, he hasn't done enough to justify, at least from what we can see on the outside looking in and from the inside looking out as well. Otherwise, he'd have a seat. So it's Jova. I wish him all the best. Maybe a career in it. I reckon reserve. Reserve is where he's at, and I think that's about as good as it gets. I could see, you know, a career, maybe a bit of WEC. Got a lot of manufacturers coming in. I wouldn't be surprised, you know, at some point if we get a big Chinese automotive manufacturer joining WEC. That would be, I think that's definitely like a BYD or something. At some point down the line, you've got obviously Hyundai is joining the Korean brands. You've got a lot of big automotive names coming into WEC. I could definitely see that at some point, maybe a career down the line for Zhou. But a reserve role for the time being, I think works for him. MG as well, maybe, yeah. Because MG's a rebadged. Obviously, I know it's Chinese cars, but I can't remember. I know there's like MG is how they operate in the UK, but obviously, you know, WEC is global, right? So I don't know if they bring MG over. But yeah, either way, Zhou, it was fun while it lasted, but yeah, not good enough. But unfortunately, Valtteri. And I feel like, you know, we spoke about this before, his option to go to Mercedes. He's talked about this. This is definitely an opportunity to go back to Mercedes as a reserve. I think he'd be a really good servant to that team to head back. And, you know, with Kimi Antonelli coming in as such a green, raw rookie, to have that presence of Bottas, who knows that team very well. And he outqualified Lewis 30% of the time. He was no schmuck in that Mercedes. So I think that's a smart move for Merck. I think that's a smart move for Valtteri. It keeps him in the paddock. It keeps him relevant. Maybe we see him on a bit of comms. We know Valtteri's brand has jumped up and done bits since he left. So, you know what? He is getting on. How is Valtteri now? Is he 30? I want to say he's 37 or 35. He's 35. He's 35. Okay, which is, I mean, he's almost 5 years younger than Lewis. So, I mean, he could have a career long term. But then again, you look at what Vettel retired at 36. I want to say, Massa and Button, all these guys all retired in the mid 30s. So, look, obviously there's an influx of rookies, right? This year we're getting a lot of young drivers coming in. Bortoleto is one of them. If any of them start to really slip and start to really mess up and show they're not of the level, then Valtteri is well positioned as someone who can step in and is a known entity, I think. And again, it's been hard for him to showcase his ability at that Sauber team. Obviously, he's said himself he's been driving at his best level whilst at this team. But, I mean, of course he's going to say that, right? Because he's not going to say I've been rubbish, because then he's definitely not going to get a seat, is he? Yeah, so I'm hopeful for Valtteri's future. If this is the end, I think he's had a pretty good career. Like, only a fraction of a percentage of F1 drivers even get a race win. He's had 10. It's sad to see it end, but also, you know, he's got a lot of interests. He's outside of Formula One, his business interests. With what he owns, co-owns an ice hockey team, doesn't he, in Lahti? He has his gin brand with his missus. He's a lot of cycling. Like he's got a lot going on, Valtteri. I hope it's not the end of seeing him in the paddock, but at the same time, I feel like a Bottas in an Indy car could bring really cool eyeballs to it. Another series, I'd love to see him doing his thing. Maybe he moves to Australia and does V8 supercars. Or supercars, should I say. So yeah, listen, if this is the end of Valtteri in Formula One, then, you know, he's done himself proud. He's done himself proud, I think. And again, he could be a good fill-in if need be. So, Bortoleto to Sauber is done, which means there is one seat, officially anyway, not confirmed for next season. It's really 2 seats, isn't it? It's Checo's seat at Red Bull, and it's the remaining V carbohydrate seat. So, now we talk about Franco, because I know there was this rumour going around of, you know, Science actually going to Red Bull and then Franco staying at Williams, and the more you think about it, the more you think, that's not going to happen, is it? Like, really, that's not, like, Red Bull already said no to Carlos, and there's been all this, like, rightly so, this big kind of rigmarole about Science going to Williams, and the team's gassed about it, and, you know, sign for the future, blah, blah, blah. That seems, I mean, if Red Bull, because they'd have to pay, you know, probably a 8-figure sum to get Carlos out of his Williams contract. If Red Bull were to spend all that money, at least 10 mil, right? It'd probably be a lot more than that, to get Carlos out of his multi-year deal at Williams, even though Carlos was a free agent, like, earlier this year, right? Not even that long ago. That would be the biggest business L. That's not going to happen. There's no chance that happens. Now, of course, Franco Colapinto, there's no room at the inn, okay? So Alex is, you know, I know he's not had a great time of it as of late, but he's not a mug, right? He gets into Q3. I know it didn't go well in Brazil, okay? But whatever, right? Whatever. He's not a mug. He's very good, Alex, okay? And that leaves Franco's future kind of up in the air. Does he stick with Williams? Should he pursue a move to the Red Bull family? Be that Racing Bulls, maybe even the Red Bull main team, which I've seen talked about, which is, there's no chance that would be the most shocking move of all time if they actually put him straight in the Red Bull seat. So I'm going to do another poll for everyone watching live on YouTube. Where you think Franco should go? So if you're Franco Colapinto out there, you might be watching Franco. Welcome. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Oh dear. If you were Franco, where would you go? So, would you aim for the Red Bull family, or would you remain at Williams and then try and get yourself a seat, kind of, you know, see if things don't go well with Science or whatever, and try and see an opportunity? Now, I said it before, and I will say it again. Personally, if there's a seat in Formula One, you prioritise that over anything. Now, I know Red Bull it's got a reputation, okay? The junior side of Red Bull, okay, has a reputation, and there's no smoke without fire. But if he can get himself in Formula One and make an impression, he doesn't have to be there forever, okay? He holds the cards in terms of, you know, contract and how long he'd want to sign, blah, 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 if they really wanted him long term anyway. So I think, you know, if there's an opportunity to go to Racing Bulls, he absolutely has to take it. I mean, surely, right? Because you stay at Williams, you can easily get forgotten. What about, okay, Arvid Lindblad comes through, or Luke Browning, right, is Williams, if he has an unbelievable F2 season. All it takes is the next generation, someone to come into F2 next year and just set the world alight. And just walk the championship, and all of a sudden, people start to forget. People move on. The Williams will know what Franco is capable of and what he brings from a commercial point of view, and the fandom that comes with Franco Colapinto. But it's a dangerous game if you don't take that opportunity when it's presented to you, it might not open up again. And that's the risk that Franco would be taking by staying at Williams if there is an opportunity presented to him in the Red Bull family. About 65% of you think Franco should go to the Red Bull family. 36% of you think he should remain at Williams. It's a difficult call to make. And you can see exactly why this makes sense, complete sense from Red Bull's point of view, especially, this happens assuming that Checo moves on, which I think now is very much now. It's like they can't justify keeping Checo. He is, I would put good money on the fact that he's not going to be in that seat next year, not in that team, and this is the end of his Formula One career. They can't justify it any longer. Winning the Drivers' Championship with Max and finishing third in the Constructors is not sustainable. Going into next year as well, I think Checo not being up there to take points off of other drivers and support Max will hurt a Max Verstappen title fight as well as a Constructors fight. So, the backing that Checo has is not going to be enough to keep him in that seat. Colapinto is a Claro sponsored, so he's got, dealings with Carlos Slim as well. And I think it really, really does make a lot of sense from Red Bull's point of view to, yes, of course, you're losing Perez, but then you're getting this. This guy is like, the reports you're seeing out of Argentina of how big a deal it is that Franco Colapinto is in Formula One. It's on Messi-esque levels of coverage, perhaps for a shorter term, I'm sure, right? But still, this is huge. So if they can bring Colapinto in, they can bring, we've seen, of course, Mercado Libre on the car so far at Williams. There's going to be brands prepared to invest in this kid because also he's proven he's actually pretty decent. And if you get him in a Racing Bulls, there is that, it might not be a clear route to the top, but there is a route to the top. So I think, with Perez gone, and I don't for a minute believe that Franco would be taking the seat alongside Max, but with Perez gone and probably Lawson alongside him, that does open up an opportunity at Racing Bulls. You've got Yuki Tsunoda locked in, obviously Honda, they do their thing. But there is someone else who, if this does happen, if Franco does go to Racing Bulls, he would feel very, very hard done by, wouldn't he? And kind of like Teo Pourchaire, it could be a case of right driver, wrong time. Because Isaac Hadjar is second in Formula 2, just 4.5 points behind Gabriel Bortoleto. He's a Red Bull junior. In Formula 3, he wasn't great in F2 last year, but in Formula 3, he went toe-to-toe with Martin and Ollie Behrman at the end of the season, right up there in the fight. And, he was leading F2 for a lot of this year. He's had a couple of difficult weekends more recently. And he will certainly feel like he should be, the first port of call for that Racing Bull seat. And if Logan doesn't struggle as much as he does, right, then Colapinto doesn't get Logan's seat. And, Horner said it himself. No one was really looking at Colapinto and taking him seriously as a potential driver. If Sargent doesn't struggle as much as he does, and if Williams don't replace him with Colapinto, then this is surely Isaac Hadjar's seat. However, now, it's not looking great. It's not looking great for him. And I think, like everyone's got an opinion on F2, and it's really hard to get a good measure. If the teams are struggling to get a measure of F2, then what chance have we got as fans? Let's be honest, right? Now, Hadjar, to me, strikes me as someone with a lot of ability. I see similarities to Yuki Tsunoda in him. I think very quick. I think Isaac has a head loss moment in him. He's got some incredible. He's the guy who, coming through the tunnel at Monaco, had to do the insane reaction save to get past Ritomo Miata. So he's got the ability, the talent, undoubted, unquestionable. But does he have the mindset? And we've seen with Yuki Tsunoda, that seems to be it seems to be the Yuki's ability behind the wheel. I think is pretty known and pretty impressive. But there's a lot more to that than just turning the wheel to being a great F1 driver. It's how you work with the team. It's how you conduct yourself on the radio. It's how you control your the mental game that comes with it. And these drivers are young, okay? But being young doesn't, Oscar Piastri was as calm as a cucumber you've just taken out the freezer, right? even in F2, when he was winning, it was like, he just won 4, 3, whatever it was, races in a row. And he was just like, yeah, mate, bloody ripper. You know what I mean? It was like, he was just chill. And Isaac he does bring a degree of chaotic energy in him. And I don't know if Red Bull look at Yuki and look at Hadjar and think, if we're not going to trust Yuki with this seat, are we going to trust Hadjar with the seat anytime soon? Because I think that stuff is very hard to overcome. You know, there's a lot of drivers who have been dug out in their careers for, you know, really struggling to keep their emotions in check. Honestly, like if I was an F2 driver, I think I'd be one of them. Not anyone else. I just get super on myself when I'm having a bad day playing golf or something. I'm meaner than any of you nasty commenters out there to myself, right? And that's really hard to kind of train out of a driver. I think Dan Ticktum's a great example. Amazing peddler, incredible talent. Was part of the Red Bull Junior Academy at one point as well, part of Williams as well. And unfortunately, just too many times he would, and we've seen it a bit in Formula E as well. His mouth will get him into trouble. And look, it's great seeing these drivers be human and real and emotional. To a point, it does also, unfortunately, it can derail a career. And is that part of the reason why Hadjar isn't being considered more highly? Because he is a Red Bull Junior and he's second in F2. So he's not exactly doing a bad job. He's doing a better job than Antonelli. Yes, Antonelli is a rookie. He's doing a better job than Behrman. Behrman's not a rookie. I know, you know, he missed Saudi and, you know, he's been doing F1 stuff, right? But and I know Halita, I know you're not a Hadjar endorser, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to be, signs are pointing now towards Franco, aren't they? Franco to Racing Bulls seems to be what everything's pointing towards, and I completely understand why Red Bull would go for Franco. And if it means a bit of a payday for Williams, you know, Franco, they already have a relationship with some of Carlos Slim's sponsors, and that can work for the team. You know, Visa Cash App probably leaving at the end of this year because they've lost Daniel Ricciardo, of course. If Franco can help bring in some sponsors and some support to bankroll that second team, it just ticks so many boxes for Red Bull. And I think Franco has to take that opportunity if it's presented to him. And it means that Isaac Hadjar probably misses out. So, yes, that's my thoughts on it. Well done, Gabriel, ultimately. Well done, Gabriel Bortoleto. I think you can't say he doesn't deserve it. F3 and probably, maybe, possibly soon to be F2 champion. Obviously, it would be huge. It would be huge if Isaac doesn't get the seat and then he wins F2. Maybe this is in Hadjar's hands. You know, if he can convert whenever the final F2 race of the season is this year, if he can convert the dub, then maybe he gets himself the seat. I don't know. It feels like Red Bull are going to give it the full year to make their decision. That's the thing as well, right? They're going to give Lawson the last 3 races. I don't think Tsunoda can do really much. Perez, I'm not looking at these tracks. Maybe Vegas, he turns it on a bit. But other than that, I'm not expecting too much from Checo. I firmly expect he will be dropped at the end of this season. Hadjar Colapinto. We'll see, won't we? Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for taking the time. A lot of new blood in F1 is exciting. DH couldn't agree more. But thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. I'm sure you've already liked the video. I'm sure you've already commented on the video and subscribed to the Tommo YouTube channel. Thank you all. Appreciate your time. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.